الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير.
Your Highness Sayyid Yazan bin Haytham Al Saeed, our guest of honor, Your Highnesses, Your Excellencies, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's my great honor to welcome you to Sultanate Oman, a nation that prides itself for its rich culture and heritage. As we convene here today at the largest gathering of sovereign wealth funds, we make a historic milestone in economic cooperation, one that will define the future of sovereign wealth funds and their role in the global economy. This forum represents more than an exchange of ideas. It acknowledges our shared values, responsibility and accountability in addressing today's challenges and advancing economic growth and sustainability. As the largest custodian of national wealth in this planet, we are no longer confined to traditional boundaries. We are now essential drivers of national developments, catalysts for economical growth, and investors in our shared future. Hence, we are called to reimagine our roles beyond conventional asset management. As we meet over the next few days, may I ask, what legacy will we leave behind? I encourage you to challenge assumptions, form new partnerships, and set a bold course for the future to ensure that the wealth we manage today will benefit generations to come. At Oman Investment Authority, we have made it our mission to make a difference. At the same time, ensure that our governance framework are robust, transparent, and accountable. This commitment to sound governance, paired with our strategic Oman's Vision 2040 for economical diversification, positions Oman as an attractive destination for transformative investments. Today, our portfolio contributes directly to the country's economy, job creation, and the development of future industries. These efforts, alongside with the efforts of other government units and in partnership with the private sector, have been recognized and further affirmed by Oman regaining its investment grade rating, which highlights Oman's financial health and the transparency of our processes under the wise and courageous leadership of His Majesty Sultan Haytham bin Tariq. With this have been said, we also invite you to explore our rich history and culture, natural beauty, and the warm hospitality of our people. We look forward to sharing the very best of Oman with you. Thank you very much.
Your Highness, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues, let me first start by extending my sincere greeting to His Highness Sayyid and Haytham Al Saeed, who kindly sponsored this conference and honored us by opening our works, which cast a special and an exceptional character to this forum. I would like also to extend my gratitude to His Excellency Abdul Salam Al-Murshidi, President of the Oman Investment Authority, for graciously hosting us at the occasion of the annual meeting of EFSWF. I would like also to extend my thanks to each of you for being here today. I want to commend the Secretariat and the OIE for selecting this year's theme, Embracing Disruption and Searching for Resilient Futures. It highlights the need for sovereign wealth funds to navigate a world of prevailing uncertainty while maintaining resilience that has defined our success over the years. We are currently navigating an era characterized by global uncertainty, the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, inflationary pressure, geopolitical conflicts, and war has collectively created unprecedented volatility for investors. This complexity is further compounded by systematic issues such as policy-driven shifts, the energy transition, and the political volatility. In this rapidly evolving landscape, artificial intelligence, another complexity, emerges as both a sign of hope and a potential source of significant disruption. While it holds the promise of revolutioning the financial sector, it also brings new risks. Increased market speed, opaque decision-making, and heightened cyber threats demand that we treat carefully, ensuring that our embrace of artificial intelligence is both strategic and responsible. However, we cannot afford to shy away from innovation. Innovation empowers us to make better investment decisions, allocate capital efficiently, and predict market shifts with greater accuracy. The systematic risks we are currently witnessing profoundly impact macrofinancial stability through key channels: the market channel, the real channel, and the credit channel. These channels do not operate in isolation. They can interact and mutually reinforce each other, amplifying the overall effect of macroeconomic uncertainty on macrofinancial stability. The risk associated with these developments can reinforce one another, amplifying their potential impact on financial stability. Our challenges lies in balancing these opportunities with our responsibility to maintain global financial stability. To sum up, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we stand today at a critical juncture where the decision we make will have a far-reaching implication for global society. The challenges we face are immense, but we mustn't get discouraged because they are matched by unprecedented opportunities. As we celebrate the 60th annual meeting of the International Forum of Sovereign Wealth Fund, more than just a moment of celebration, our gathering today must be used to reflect on our collective achievements and the path forward. With all the complexities that lie ahead, are carefully expressed in this year's annual meeting theme, it is now crucial to recognize that while the Santiago Principles and sound governance have provided a crucial foundation for our forum, we must now evolve. These principles have united us around transparency and accountability and set a common ground for the forum. Yet, in this era of disruption, we must do more than adhere to the least common denominator. We must push beyond the baseline and have a vision. The future demands more of us, and ever before, we must be ambitious. Together, we have unlimited potential to transform the investment landscape into one that is more ethical and more impactful laying the groundwork for a stable and equitable tomorrow, and ensuring that future generation inherit a world that reflects our shared value and aspiration. Let's reflect on that in the coming days. Thank you for unwavering dedication and engagement through this journey. Thank you.
More than 70 years ago, and from this region, the story of sovereign wealth funds as we know them today was written. It brought a new dawn and a message of hope and reassurance for generations to come. The world saw its first sovereign wealth fund, driven by a vision that invests the present for the future. One after another, sovereign wealth funds began appearing on the global map, as the first sovereign wealth funds were created to invest excess oil revenues. Royal Decree number 1/1980 marked the birth of what we know today as Oman Investment Authority, one of the first sovereign wealth funds established in the region, the small region that collectively manages half the assets owned by sovereign wealth funds globally. In the early days, sovereign wealth funds adopted a conservative approach, focusing on low-risk investments. However, the mid-90s saw a significant transformation when some sovereign funds ventured into more diversified investments. From this point on, the role of sovereign wealth funds began to evolve. They invested to save for future generations, ensure financial stability and sustainability, and stimulate economic development by investing locally. In 2008, these funds were the lifeline for many countries to recover from the financial crisis. They rose to play a crucial role in supporting national economies. In recent years, the COVID-19 pandemic gave us valuable lessons about uncertainty. As a result, many sovereign wealth funds had their roles redefined to cover more mandates. Today, sovereign wealth funds strive towards the future, guided by a vision of sound governance, national development, human capital development, and leading rapid technological evolution. The International Forum of Sovereign Wealth Funds, Musqat 2024, for generations to come.
Allow me to first begin by saying that we're honored by the presence of Your Highness, Sayyid bin Haytham Al Saeed, Minister of Culture, Sports, and Youth. Thank you for gracing us with your presence this morning at the International Forum for Sovereign Wealth Funds. I'd also like to express our deep gratitude for Your Excellency Abdussalam Al-Murshidi as well as Ubaid Imran for the insightful remarks during your speech in the morning. Your words have set the stage for what promises to be an inspiring gathering over the next few days. Your Highnesses, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today and for your continued dedication to advancing our goals through this meeting. It's wonderful to see such a gathering of esteemed professionals from across the world gathered with a united vision to enhance existing investment capabilities. I'd also like to extend a heartfelt gratitude for the organizing team behind this entire event. Your efforts in orchestrating this event with such dedication have made not only today, but the upcoming days possible. Please, let's hear a huge round of applause for the team behind all of this. Your Highness, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Muzna Raisi, and I'm a member of the public markets of Oman Investment Authority. It's my unique and distinct pleasure to welcome you all here at the forum. I personally and selfishly look forward to the upcoming days and getting to know as many of you as possible.
Thank you, Muzna, for your welcoming remarks. My name is Ahmed Sajwani, an analyst within the Economic and Investment Research Department at Oman Investment Authority, and I'll be emceeing alongside Muzna today. This event is remarkable, as it marks as the largest gathering of sovereign wealth funds in history. We are deeply honored to have you here in Oman, a nation with a remarkable tradition of hospitality, and where openness and a warm welcome have been an integral part of our culture for centuries. Oman has also long been known as a seafaring nation, allowing it to connect with other nations through trade, which we will make sure to show later on in the commemorative gifts. As we come here to discuss the future of investments, we can't think of a more fitting host than Oman. Not only is the country honoring its traditions, but it's also casting a bold vision for the future. Oman's Vision 2040 sets ambitious targets for economic diversification, aiming to enhance economic resilience and to ensure sustainable growth. This aligns so well with the very purpose of sovereign wealth funds and one of its key mandates, investing strategically to secure and expand wealth for the future. We encourage you to discuss, learn, share, and engage with one another, as this event is held under the Chatham House rules. Your Highness, our distinguished guests, today we will have the opportunity to hear and learn from some of our brightest minds on key topics relating to this event's theme, embracing disruption. Topics will include the future of investments, AI, the space economy, enhancing governments, the green transition, the US presidential election, and more. Our guests tonight will also have the opportunity to visit the historic city of Musqat, which houses the iconic palace of Al-Alam, the official ceremonial palace of His Majesty the Sultan. Our guests will also be able to visit the Al-Mirani Fort, a 16th century fort that was recently opened to the public and will host its first dinner in 500 years exclusively for our guests tonight.
Thank you, Ahmed. So now that we're done telling you how great the next couple of days are going to be, how about we actually begin? Your Highness, ladies and gentlemen, pleasure to introduce to you one of the most visionary and transformative leaders of our time, Mr. Elon Musk, who he himself does not need any further introductions. Elon will be joining us today and sharing his insights on critical topics of our present day and tomorrow's future. Moderating the conversation with Elon is Mr. Antonio Gracias, a distinguished leader in the world of equity, private equity. Antonio is the founder and CEO of Valor Equity Partners, a Chicago-based firm managing about $16 billion in gross assets. With over 25 years of experience, Antonio has not only made a profound impact in the investment world, but is also known for his dedicated effort in the philanthropic world. Antonio's connection with Elon dates all the way back to 2000, first starting with PayPal, and later evolving into a pivotal role, becoming one of the first institutional investors in Tesla. He's held a number of distinguished roles, including a director at Tesla, SpaceX, and most recently, XI, bringing visionary leadership to one of the most groundbreaking companies in the world. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Elon on the screen and Antonio onto the stage.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So as I begin, I want to begin by welcoming Your Highness Saeed Thiazin bin Haitham. Thank you, Your Highnesses, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's truly an honor for Elon and for me to be here today. Elon wanted to be here personally, but given events in the U.S., he could not come. Sorry about that. He could not come personally. He has his representative, and I'd say right-hand person for all things in finance and investments, Jared Burchell here with him to represent him. So Elon, welcome to Oman.
Thank you.
It's nice to see you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm currently kind of managing the ground game for public. Is the audio coming through okay? I'm getting an echo and feedback.
Can you hear Elon okay? There's an echo. Can we correct the echo?
There is an echo. I'm hearing my voice back a few seconds later.
Okay, we'll give it a second to correct. Let's try it again. Is that better?
Testing 1, 2, 3.
I think that's better.
So. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds better. Okay, good.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah, so we're here. I just want you to understand the audience here. We have over 50 sovereign wealth funds representative. It's the largest gathering ever of sovereign wealth funds, $8 trillion of capital total. And at the same time, this is being broadcast live to the people of Oman. So we want to thank our hosts here in Oman for having us. It's very kind of them to invite us here to the gathering. And you're in Austin?
Thank you. I'm in Austin currently. I'm in the US. My apologies for not being there in person. I'm currently managing the ground game for the Republican election, essentially for Donald Trump and for the senators, and I mean basically for the Republican side of the election on Tuesday. So it's difficult for me to travel at this time. We certainly are going to have an interesting outcome on Tuesday, hopefully one where Donald Trump is elected. But anyway, that's the reason I can't be there is that I'm literally managing the Republican ground game right now.
So what did you like to say? The most likely outcome is often the most entertaining. So let's hope it one's entertain us. Yeah.
I do have this theory. I do have this theory, which is that if you're trying to predict the future, the most entertaining outcome is the most likely. That's as seen by a third party. So if we were in like some sort of alien Netflix series or alien soap opera, and you were trying to think what would get the highest ratings, that is the thing that is most likely to occur in my experience. Now that is not necessarily a great thing for those that are in the soap opera or sort of alien Netflix series. You know, just like you could be watching a movie about war and people are getting blown up, but you're drinking a soda and eating popcorn. But we're in the movie. Anyway, so I do find it remarkable that the thing that is the most interesting thing, most entertaining thing, is the most likely outcome. So we shall see whatever it is, it's going to be interesting. I mean, there's, I guess, sort of a Chinese saying that may you live in interesting times is like something of a curse or something like that. But in fact, we live right now in the most interesting of times. In all of history, I think this is the most interesting time. I mean, it's even occurred to me that, like, I wonder if AI is going to take over and, I don't know, potentially destroy us all, then because I do have that concern. I'm like worried about that, but I've somewhat reconciled myself to this by thinking that, well, if it is, would I want to be around to see it, or would I not? And I guess I would prefer to be around to see it rather than not see it. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, these are the most interesting of times. I mean, I certainly hope that we're not at some sort of juncture in the future where there is a fundamental changing of the guard, and where humans cease to be relevant, if the future is digital superintelligence and robots, are humans relevant in such a future? I hope so, but we may not be. I hope so.
Well, look,
Yeah.
let's you kind of jump to the end of our conversation, but let's talk about that for a minute. So, the future is probabilistic and non-determined, and the activities we engage in today matter, right? And so, you obviously are of the humans on Earth trying the hardest to get to the best outcome. You've worked very hard your entire life to get there. And how do you see that happening? I mean, given where we are now, Neuralink, many of the companies you're working on, they're focused on getting us to a good outcome. How do you see that?
Yeah. I mean, you've got obviously Tesla, which is building electric cars, the largest manufacturer of electric cars in the world. This year, I think we'll make like almost 2 million cars, electric vehicles, and next year, I don't know, 20-30% more than that. So, at some point, Tesla will be making probably 10 million vehicles a year or more, and they will all be autonomous. So they will not be driven in the future. It'll become quite normal, in fact, expected, that cars simply drive themselves, in the same way that elevators drive themselves. Like there was a time, last century when you had to have an elevator operator to move elevators between floors. Now you just get in an elevator and press a button. That's what that's what cars will be like in the future. So my prediction is that in fact, all vehicles except rockets will be autonomous and electric. All of them. Not some of them, but all of them. And then Tesla's also designing and building autonomous robots in the form of humanoid robots, like our Optimus robot. Sometimes I wonder, like, should we build these things? Then I think, well, if we don't build them, someone else will build them. Boston Dynamics or someone else. And so we're building humanoid robots that will be able to navigate the world autonomously and pretty much do anything that a human can do. And at SpaceX, last year SpaceX delivered about 80% of all Earth mass to orbit. This year, SpaceX will do 90% of all Earth mass to orbit. With the Starship vehicle, if we continue with our current plans, which is to build a city on Mars and a base on the moon, SpaceX will deliver 99.9% of all mass to orbit. Literally, the rest of Earth will be 0.1%. That's the current situation, or that's the future situation, I should say. With respect to AI, with the XAI, we're aiming to build the smartest AI in the world, the most intelligent artificial intelligence in the world. Again, I do have some trepidation about this. I mean, I'm worried. Like, should we actually do this? I don't know. At times, I have some doubts. But again, if we don't do it, while others are doing it. So I mean, you've got Google building their sort of Gemini AI, and you've got OpenAI, which is a company I co-founded actually. And you've got Meta building an AI. You've got Amazon and Anthropic building AI. So if we don't, basically it's getting built. And currently the top AIs in the world will be, currently controlled by Larry Page at Google, Mark Zuckerberg at Meta, or Facebook, or whatever, and Sam Altman at OpenAI. So, it's sort of like, well, I don't know, do you want an AI that's just, do you want all of the AI to be controlled by those three guys? I don't know, maybe that, if you can even control AI.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you really can. But you can train AI. You can guide it, sort of like if you had a genius child or something like that. You could say, even if you know this child is going to be far smarter than you can still teach it good values. You can still bring it up in a good way. And like the thing that I think is most important for AI, for training AI, for growing an AI effectively, is that it have an absolute focus on truth, and maximizing the probability that what it says is true, and it is not misguided or being forced to lie. One of the things that I found quite troubling, for example, with Gemini, and we see this also with ChatGPT and some of the others, is that they're being trained in a nihilistic philosophy, in a dangerous philosophy, one that is a San Francisco, Berkeley, sort of far left, I think almost extinctionist philosophy. One can see the results of this philosophy on the streets of San Francisco, which look, San Francisco was formerly a beautiful city, and now it looks like a zombie apocalypse downtown. So you can see the results of this philosophy firsthand, any day of the week. I find it very concerning that that philosophy is informing the training of artificial intelligence. In fact, I think that's a really major problem. To give you an example of how this can go wrong in a potentially quite a serious way, is when Gemini was released, people asked, well, what is worse? Global thermonuclear war, essentially the annihilation of all humans, or misgendering Caitlyn Jenner? And it said misgendering Caitlyn Jenner was worse than global thermonuclear war. Now, what happens if that artificial intelligence becomes all-powerful and concludes that the best way to avoid misgendering is to destroy all humans, thus making the probability of misgendering zero? That is one of the possible outcomes. So I think we need to build AI in a way that is rigorously truthful and is not sort of infused with a far-left woke ideology, which I think it has extinction risk for humanity. So that's the goal of XAI, is really just to build a maximally truth-seeking AI that loves humanity, and that's the goal of XAI.
So, Elon, this reminds me, going back a bit, it might be interesting for our audience here to hear the history of what happened here, because you had built the most advanced autonomous system in the world at Tesla, and it isn't often recognized that there was a choice made after FSD, or I'd say the vision of FSD, to bring the LLM in or out and open source it. And I'd like to maybe begin by asking the question of the history of artificial intelligence at Tesla and in your as Morgan Stanley says, the Musk economy, or in your ecosystem, and then without being too negative, what happened in OpenAI, and then why XAI was necessary, because your original thesis was that this technology should be open to all, that it should be open sourced, hence the name OpenAI. And perhaps you could take us through that arc a little bit and explain to our audience here the history, what happened, and where we are today.
Sure. Well, as I've mentioned, I have some trepidation about developing digital superintelligence. It's not like I couldn't have done it already. In fact, I deliberately didn't do it because I was worried that it would pose too much of a risk to humanity. And then I used to be close friends with Larry Page at Google, and I'd stay at his house in Palo Alto because I'd spend half the week running or in Los Angeles, kind of running SpaceX, and half the week running Tesla in the Bay Area. And when I was in the Bay Area, I'd often stay with Larry Page, and we'd have these conversations long into the night about AI safety. And it was just obvious to me that Larry did not seem to care about AI safety. And and I kept saying, well, what about, don't you care about the humans? What about humanity? And he like the final straw, frankly, that caused me to say we have to create an alternative was when I was accused of being a speciesist, meaning like a racist, but for humanity, a speciesist. And Larry said, well, you're a speciesist. And I'm like, well, yeah, but what side are you on, Larry? I mean, the row. So I'm like, this is troubling if you're on the side. What, aren't you on Team Humanity? What's going on? So then I was like, okay, we're going to create something, because at the time Google had basically almost all the AI talent and all the computers and kind of a ton of money. So then it's like, okay, we need to create something that is the opposite of Google, which would be open source and nonprofit. So OpenAI was originally created. I named the company OpenAI because the opening of OpenAI is meant to represent open source. Now, ironically, since fate loves irony, so I should, it's not that just merely the most entertaining outcome is the most likely, but also the most ironic outcome is the most likely. And now, ironically, OpenAI, through machinations that I don't fully understand, has become a closed AI for maximum profit. It should instead of being called OpenAI, it should be called closed for maximum profit AI. .com. It's so clear to me, like, I don't know. I think like fate loves irony, but it hates hypocrisy. So I think hypocritical things do not have a good end, and that's my observation. But I do feel a bit like, I funded, a company to help preserve the Amazon rainforest, and then instead of preserving the Amazon rainforest, it decided to chop down the trees and sell the lumber for profit. And I'm like, that's pretty much the opposite of what I gave the money for. So anyway, I, at this point, do not have a favorable opinion of OpenAI. It is an exercise in hypocrisy. And I don't have confidence in that it's creating a good AI. And so, hence the creation of XAI as an alternative. XAI is doing well. I mean, we're only about 18 months old, and despite training on a small fraction of the compute of OpenAI and Gemini, we at this point have a top 5 AI in the world with Grok. And we should soon complete training of Grok 3, which we think will be the most intelligent AI in the world. That's just in a few months, so not long from now. As I said earlier, I could have done this before now. It's just, I was like, concerned that do you really want to win the race to extinction? That seems like, what do you want to do, put a gold medal on the grave? That's the thing that has caused me reticence thus far. But now I think there's kind of no choice. Either build it or others will build it. And build it right, or the others will maybe not build it right. So, I know this may not sound like I have like the most immense amount of enthusiasm for building digital superintelligence, but I think maybe that's a good thing. We want to have a good AI future, a good AI outcome, and I think, like I said, have an AI that is maximally truth-seeking, even if the truth is politically incorrect, and never train it to lie, or and hopefully it is curious and loves humanity. It is. I think for people in the audience who maybe, I think you've seen, snapshots of how much digital intelligence is growing, but you haven't quite seen it from my perspective, from when I saw it, from when it was like just barely anything at all. GPT-1. GPT-1 was worse than a hand-coded chatbot. So it was embryonic. And then GPT-2 was like a moderately okay chatbot. Then GPT-3 was, okay, this is better than any chatbot. Then GPT-4 is like, okay, this is a whole new beast. It can write better essays than probably, 99% of humans at this point. And now this trend is continuing. So, it's almost impossible to comprehend what is a 10,000 IQ entity. Like, if the smartest humans are, for argument's sake, let's say 150 or maybe 200 IQ points or something like that. Well, what is a 10,000 IQ entity? Can we even begin to understand that? I don't know. That's where we're headed. An intelligence that is almost almost incomprehensible in its magnitude relative to humans.
So, Elon,
if one is like, maybe some suggestions on fiction because you're like, well, what would such a world look like? But in a good scenario, I recommend the culture books by Ian Banks. The culture books by Ian Banks are, I think, the most accurate books portraying a future with digital superintelligence in a mostly good way. Mostly.
So I was just going to bring up the culture series actually, because I know we both love the science fiction. Clearly a benign outcome, but you also have envisioned another benign outcome, which is a merger of the human brain and artificial intelligence through Neuralink. Tell us what you think that future looks like.
Yeah, things get a little esoteric here. So you can think of our intelligence currently as being in three layers. We have the limbic system, which are kind of like our primal instincts. Then we've got the cortical layer, which is long-term planning. So the brain is more or less divided into two parts: the limbic system and the cortex. Instincts and planning, essentially. And then, but there's a tertiary layer, a third layer, that is that we already have in the form of our phones, our computers, the applications that we use. That is our tertiary layer. And you've probably felt like if you leave your phone behind, it's almost like missing limb syndrome. Like leaving your phone is like leaving a limb behind almost. Because we are actually already an Android. It's just that the tertiary layer, we have a communication bandwidth constraint on the tertiary layer, which is the sort of compute element of a human at this point. So what Neuralink is aiming to do is to solve the bandwidth problem, so that you can have much higher bandwidth between your mind and the computer. If you think of the bandwidth of a human, like, let's say, what is the average output bits per second of a human over the course of a day? So there's 86,400 seconds in a day, but the humans do not output on average 86,400 symbols. So the bit rate of a human is less than 1 bit per second. And if you compare that to a computer, which can operate at 1 billion bits per second, or even maybe 1 trillion bits per second, but certainly a gigabit is very basic at this point. So the computer's operating maybe 1 billion times faster in bandwidth than a human. With a Neuralink device, I think we can we can span that gap by several orders of magnitude. So we could say perhaps humans could then communicate at a megabit or maybe even a gigabit potentially. So that's really the choke point, is the speed of communication between you and the computer. That's what Neuralink can solve in the long term. In the short term, it can solve some basic things like enabling somebody who's a quadriplegic or a tetraplegic, or someone who's lost the connection between their mind and their body, to be able to control a computer or phone. So we have two Neuralinks implanted at this point in two different people, and they're able to control their phone and their computer just by thinking. So it's literally just by thinking. They don't have to move their eyes. They can do it with their eyes closed. And we're continuing to improve the Neuralink devices, improving the bits per second, and the number of electrodes, and eventually it'll be like a whole brain interface, where, like I said, you can communicate at megabit levels, and hopefully this is helpful in achieving human-machine symbiosis. I think it will be. So, and even if it doesn't, Neuralink will at least solve a number of brain-related issues, like brain injuries or any loss of connection between the brain and the body. So, a product we're hopefully will do an implant in next year is called Blind Sight, which will enable people who are blind in both eyes, and even if they've lost the optic nerve, and even if they were born blind, still to be able to see via a Neuralink implant, because it's directly stimulating the visual cortex of the brain. We have had this working in monkeys for a few years now. So we have monkeys that have a blind sight already, at some point this will, I think, enable vision people to be able to see in different wavelengths. So be able to see and anything from like radar to ultraviolet, kind of like Geordi LaForge from Star Trek. Whatever, you can kind of see in any wavelength that you want to see. And I suppose at some point you should be able to also upload snapshots of your memory to the computer as well. So, perhaps that will be some form of immortality. We're still many years away from that, but I can see how that would ultimately be something that would work. It wouldn't be probably quite the same being in a computer, I suppose, but I don't know. It's going to be, like I said, we're living the most interesting of times, and it's getting more interesting in an accelerating way. So, yeah.
So we're here with really the world's largest cap allocators. They're thinking about, like you do, in 20, 30, 40-year horizons about the future of humanity. And in particular, with our friends here. Yeah, we're with our friends here in Oman, in the Gulf. Yeah. And one question I am asked is, what can leaders here in this room, in the Gulf and in Oman, do in their countries to help bring about the Star Trek future, not the Terminator future, the future where the superintelligence is helping us, and the culture future, right? Where we're all working together, and the AI loves humanity and wants to help it develop. What can the folks in this room do to help you in that future?
Well, this is certainly a very high capital endeavor, because the scale of intelligence seems to be proportionate to the amount of compute. So as you increase the amount of compute and the amount of training, now it's quite difficult to do training at scale, but as you are able to bring to bear more and more compute power, it does result in more intelligence. Like there seems to be a clear scaling law. So I guess we're pushing that boundary, and it's going to be a very expensive endeavor. So it'll take gigawatts of power and probably ultimately tens of billions, if not hundreds of billions of dollars. It's very expensive. Now, if you have digital superintelligence, it can probably solve a lot of economic questions, or if not, it wouldn't be all that smart. So I think when you pair digital superintelligence with robotics, there's really nothing it can't do. I mean, any product or service you can think of, including things you can't think of, it could make. If you pair a very powerful mind with a very powerful body or bodies, then you can basically create any products or services you want. Like in the culture books by Ian Banks, products and services are essentially free. I mean, there's no like if you think of productivity, right now we have like massive productivity constraints based on the number of humans. So like the GDP of Earth is like the average productivity of times number of humans. Now, but what happens when if you have no constraint on capita, like meaning you can grow a population of humanoid robots to 10 billion, 20 billion, 30 billion, and moreover, these humanoid robots can work 168 hours a week, not just 40. And they don't have to be grown from an embryo and take 20 years to be productive. They're instantly productive, and they don't have retirement. They don't have because humans are only productive for about half their life, from about age 20 to 60, but they're not productive until age 20, roughly, and then their productivity declines significantly after age 60 or 65. And then later in life, humans need a lot of care just to stay alive. But robots don't need those things. So the productivity of a humanoid robot, especially when paired with digital superintelligence, will be almost incomprehensibly gigantic. There will be no shortage of products and services. Anyone can have anything, basically, in the future. It won't be universal basic income, it'll be universal high income, in the benign scenario.
I'm only agreeing
which I think is 80% likely.
I would disagree with one thing, which is we're about the same age, so I hope 65 isn't our termination age on work. We got to keep going past that. I hope we figure out a way to get a little bit more productivity years beyond 65, my friend. Possible?
I think it varies by but most people retire around 65.
Yeah.
That's retirement age for most people. But the larger point I'm making is really just that humans are productive for about half their life, and then there's a tremendous amount of resources required to bring a human from embryonic form to being productive at, let's say, age 20 or early 20s. And then humans don't work 168 hours a week. Most people will work 40 or 45 hours a week. So the productivity of a humanoid robot is just dramatically greater. It's gigantic. And I think the humanoid robots will cost less than a car. I mean, if you look at they're certainly way less than, their mass is much less than a car. And in sufficiently high volume, any given product tends to approximate its raw material value plus whatever intellectual property exists in it. So basically, I think sophisticated humanoid robots will cost, I don't know, maybe $20,000, like comparable to an economy car, like a small car, essentially.
Right.
But have productivity that is insane. Um, like I said, I hope there's a role for humans here. You know, I hope so. It's something that occurred to me that is, you can arguably think of any given civilization as percentage completion of Kardashev scale. So, like Kardashev scale 1 would be that a civilization has harnessed all the power of its planet. And Kardashev scale 2 would be all the power of the sun. And Kardashev 3 would be all the power of the galaxy. You know, on that basis, we are less than 1% of Kardashev scale 1. So there's a long way to go. Yeah.
So,
and the vast majority of energy is the sun. It's overwhelmingly the source of energy. Just, you know, that's long term. That is overwhelmingly the source of energy. It's not even, nothing is even close.
right. Free fusion
The sun is
reactor.
99.8% of all. Yeah, there's a giant fusion reactor in the sky called the sun. Just shows up every day and doesn't require any maintenance.
Yeah.
The sun is 99.8% of all mass in the solar system. Most of the remaining mass is Jupiter. Earth is not even in the noise in terms of mass of the solar system. We're many decimal places. We were like 0.0001%. That's some very tiny number. That's the entire mass of Earth. And the sun converts over 4 million tons of mass to energy every second. This is a level of power output that is incomprehensibly gigantic. And there are many millions of suns, billions of suns actually out there. So, you know, I think it's helpful to look at things in terms of some of these fundamental measures of these fundamental ratios, like how much, what's the energy per person over time? Like you know, for a long time, or even the total amount of useful work done by any creatures at all on Earth. You know, the harness and the energy output harnessed was proportionate to the number of people and animals for the longest time. Then in the Industrial Revolution with James Watt and the steam engine, we were able to burn things and we're no longer constrained by the energy output of humans and horses. And so the actual total amount of harnessed energy on Earth increased dramatically. Like the Industrial Revolution looks like a wall, basically. If you say total energy that is harnessed in some productive form. So that's an interesting measure. I think that this is going to become some crazy ratio in the future, like maybe a megawatt, a gigawatt per person, a terawatt per person. It's going to be something insane. And then another fundamental metric is the amount of intelligence on Earth. You know, currently, the amount of intelligence without digital intelligence is proportionate to the number of human brains times average intelligence. Now, as you get digital intelligence, it's that starts to become a really gigantic number. So, and in the fairly near future, I think digital intelligence will exceed the sum of all human intelligence, probably in as little as 5 or 6 years. 10 years at the outside. So if somebody says like, what's the 20-year plan? I'm like, I don't know what 20 years from now looks like. I mean, except that, you say like 20 years from now, I think all human intelligence might only be 1% of intelligence. And probably digital intelligence is 99% of intelligence in 20 or 30 years. So we'll see if these words are accurate or not. Yeah, I can play the recording 10 years from now.
So Elon, what you're describing is the resource constraints on development are going to change. The equation, the fundamental equation of what it means to develop an economy will change because the amount of power available to each human will change. And we're here in the Global South. You're from South Africa, right? Many of the countries here are developing, and the policymakers are asking the question of what does this mean for us? How do we actually help our people here develop faster using this technology? What is the best way to help our people here in Oman and here in the region to have better lives, to educate, to move forward with healthcare and other areas? What would you recommend to them? How should they think about that?
I mean, the future is AI and robots, big time. So, I mean, just to describe like the positive AI future, I mean, we're all looking at a situation where AI can teach you anything you want to know, and it's an incredibly patient, knowledgeable teacher. It's as though you had as many incredible teachers as you could possibly want or imagine. From an education standpoint, that seems pretty good. I think AI will also be able to solve almost really maybe any medical issue. I mean, it's already the case that with Grok, you can actually input your MRI scans or PET scans or X-rays and ask Grok to tell you what it thinks, and it'll give you quite an accurate diagnosis. And literally, if you can feed it your medical reports, you take a photo of a blood test and ask it, do you see anything wrong with this? And it'll tell you. And it's already, I think, better than most doctors, and it will be vastly better than most doctors, and probably better than maybe any doctor in a relatively near future. So you've got education, medicine. There's something that AI hasn't yet done is it has not invented useful technology, but that will come. I think inventing useful technology, it may be only a year or two away. Obviously, we already see AI being able to produce any kind of art that you can imagine. So if you can think of it, AI can produce the art of it, like images and video. I mean, it is somewhat of a, it's called the singularity, like the advent of digital superintelligence is called the singularity because it's kind of like a black hole. You don't really know what's on the other side of the black hole. So I wish I could give better advice or recommendations than that, except that based on what I've seen and what I'm aware of, the future will be very much digital superintelligence and robotics. And I hope we as humans are able to go along for the ride and have a good future for humanity.
So I've been asked many questions here about applications, monetization of AI, as you just mentioned, right? That it's going to be useful because it's going to create things for humanity. How would you go about building applications for, let's just pick education or healthcare vertical? If you're a government, if you're the government of Oman or a government here in the region or a government representing the room, how would you think about building this application? Should they go find a company, build a company, partner with Grok? I mean, what's the strategy you would think about?
I think so. Certainly, partnering with Grok is sounds good.
Well, I have to tell you, there are many people in the room here who have asked me, how do we partner with Grok? They're excited about it. How do we do that?
Yeah.
Should I take orders on the way out and to get people signed up?
Yeah, I mean, I don't actually. I mean, we're building a digital superintelligence that you can basically ask it to do anything you want, and it'll do it. So, that's I think there's going to be a lot of AIs. There's going to be AI everywhere. I mean, digital intelligence would just be everywhere. I mean, it's kind of like, you know, I mean, people can remember the era of flip phones when, in fact, I mean, I can remember when they weren't even cell phones, obviously. But you go from like cell phones to flip phones that didn't have any intelligence. Now you've got, you know, with an iPhone or an Android, you've got like a supercomputer in your pocket. That's like an oracle. You can ask it anything, and it's going to give you an answer. So now that trend is just going to continue. So where your phones and your computers get smarter and smarter and smarter, so you can ask it basically anything, and the only constraint is how quickly can you communicate? What is the bandwidth that you can communicate with? What's the bits per second that you can communicate with your phone? Which is why Neuralink is, we're doing Neuralink in order to increase the bandwidth. So yeah, but I think there's probably going to be AIs everywhere of greatly varying degrees of intelligence.
So, Elon, it's time to move to questions here. We're running a little bit of time, so 15 minutes of questions, if that's okay. Would that be okay if I do that?
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, great. So I've got a bunch. There are a number of questions here. Let me just sort through them all so we don't. Let's see. Let's talk a little about SpaceX and Starlink. We haven't done that at all. So a little bit of view of where you are with Starship, what is going to happen with Starlink, how you think about data security and sovereignty in the GCC region in particular as you expand here, and really what this means for, I'd say, global development and also global security.
Sure. Well, I mean, Starlink is, we're kind of rebuilding the internet in space. So, it does have the potential to be much faster than the ground-based internet, because the ground-based internet is going through glass fiber, and the speed of light in air and space is 40% faster than it is in glass fiber. So, so Starlink is, basically potentially a superior internet in space, it's the first ever global high bandwidth internet from space. Like you can be on a mountaintop in Antarctica or in a city and get high bandwidth. I should say that it is hard for a space-based system to compete with cell towers in dense urban environments, but Starlink outside of in low to medium density environments is physics is on its side. It's I think it's going to be it's going to ultimately serve probably over 10% of all internet traffic on Earth, maybe 20 or more. So it's I don't know, it's kind of like alien level technology. And then Starship is, I mean, it's a planet colonizer. It's intended to build a city on Mars, and a base on the moon. Because I think we want to become a multi-planet civilization, multi-planet species, and ultimately be out there among the stars. So, and I think it's important that we try to become a multi-planet species as quickly as possible, just in case there's something bad happens on Earth. It'll take I think at least 20 or 30 years to have Mars be self-sustaining. But the probable future of civilization, the probable lifespan of civilization is much greater once we are multi-planet species. So that's actually the goal of SpaceX. And then Starlink was conceived as a way to kind of help pay for that.
Right, so one of the questions I have here is SpaceX and the GCC, and is there a role for the GCC to play in transportation, logistics, and even human colonization flight, whether it's the moon mission or further? Have you thought about globalizing access to space and globalizing access to human flight into space?
Well, I mean, with Starship, we are aiming to be able to transport like 1 million people to Mars. So really enabling anyone who wants to go to Mars to go to Mars. And be a Martian, I guess. As well as to be on the moon. Now this is so radically far beyond what anything else, like no company is trying to do anything like this. Or no government is even trying to do anything like this. You know, China has a plan to send a few astronauts or taikonauts to the moon, I think around 2030. I'm talking about having an entire science base on the moon and a city on Mars, with, you know, millions of people and everything. So, yeah, I mean, these are just very different orders of magnitude situations. Yeah. Like the scale of Starship is not generally well understood. I mean, you know, with Starship, we're aiming to get to do, you know, 200,000 plus tons per year to orbit. The rest of Earth outside of SpaceX currently does 200 tons to orbit every year. So that's when I say like Starship is aiming to do 99.9%. I mean that literally. Rest of Earth 200 tons currently, unless something changes. Starship 200,000 tons. Really, but if you don't do, if you're not at that scale, then you can't build a city on Mars.
Right. So there's a question here that is also related to SpaceX in how sovereign wealth funds can help you contribute to the future of humanity in space and with Starlink, with their resources. So there are, you know, in much part of the global South, we still have people without internet connectivity. Is there an opportunity for sovereign wealth funds to step in and help fill that gap in partnership with Starlink? Would you welcome that kind of relationship?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Starlink it's global connectivity, so it'll work anywhere, and there's no need for ground cables. The Starlink constellation it self-communicates, so there's a laser mesh that connects all of the Starlink satellites. So there's no need for even ground stations, really. You can connect anywhere on Earth with or without a ground station. And then we've been launching the Starlink direct-to-cell system, where the satellites, it's a different constellation. The satellites will communicate directly with your cell phone, with no additional equipment. Wow. Albeit at 100 times less bandwidth than if you have a dedicated terminal.
Got it. Well, Elon, I'm getting an actual gong here, so I want to thank you very much. We want to thank you very much for your time. It's really been a great conversation, and we're honored to have had you. Thank you very much. It's great.
Well, thank you.
Thank you both, Elon and Antonio, for this enlightening session. I found Elon's emphasis on training AI interesting, especially as training AI models, by virtue of nature, is costly, and often prohibitively costly as well. Nonetheless, such investments may seem costly today, but they may be very, very well the seed for exploring new frontiers and breakthrough innovation. And now, please join me to welcome an inspiring entrepreneur, a philanthropic leader, and a true force for positive change. As the founder, chairman, and CEO of Vesta Equity Partners, he has pioneered the landscape of private equity investments in tech-related businesses. Please join me in welcoming on stage Mr. Robert Smith.
Again, thank you, Your Highness and Excellencies. This is difficult to follow Elon Musk in anything, but I'll try to bring a bit of realism and pragmatism to how we get from here to there. We are all facing some unique challenges in our world, and a new entrant of this generative AI and potential AGI dynamic is going to change all of our worlds dramatically. And we, of course, have to navigate that. You know, I as an investor, you all as allocators, and government leaders have a unique challenge. And I hope that in this few minutes that I have, I can at least give you some things to think about and some practical applications to bring to your work that will inform, hopefully, a more positive outcome that Gen AI can bring our world. Just as a bit of background, I started my career at a place called Bell Laboratories many years ago, degree in chemical engineering. I had the good fortune of working at a place called Goldman Sachs and helped start our tech group way back when. I was our first M&A banker on the ground in San Francisco in 1997. I advised a company called Apple Computer, a company called Microsoft, one called Yahoo, eBay, Hewlett-Packard, and started to really understand the impact that technology was going to have in our world, and then ultimately what enterprise software would bring to the world of technology as it's separated from the hardware systems. I started my business over 25 years or 24 years ago, 25 years ago this spring. We now have, in essence, a little over $100 billion in assets under management. We own 85 software companies, 4 pending acquisitions of software companies, over 500 million users of our software globally. We operate in 180 countries in 70 different industries. And what has been an exciting journey to watch how enterprise software has emerged from when I started this business as the 10th largest industry to now the largest and fastest growing. And the main reason behind that is enterprise software still is the most productive tool that's been introduced in our business economy in the last 50 years. This whole world of Gen AI and artificial intelligence, it's software. And it is yet another catalyst to the way that we will use technology to enable our worlds to be more productive, our employees to be more productive, and frankly, to hopefully improve the condition of the communities that we care about. This has all happened in waves. I will start with the first wave that we've seen in this world of Gen AI, which I've been asked to speak about today. We're now seeing the beneficiaries of it, which are the hardware producers. You know, NVIDIA is capturing the lion's share of this economic rent today, but there are many fast followers. Some of them will eclipse in some respects some of their capabilities over time. But as you all know, this is going to require a vast amount of capital, because I'm sure every one of these companies and every entity that we've discussed in the last discussion, and Antonio, great job in moderating that, has come to each of you for capital for not only the build out of the capabilities of the hardware, but the power that's going to be required to build out the infrastructure. The next wave will likely, and what we'll see, are the hyperscalers. They are going to, many of these hyperscalers are public companies today, part of this Magnificent Seven, but there are also sovereigns, some in this room, who have desires to also be hyperscalers, to build capacity and to use their capacity, capability, energy production capacity to deliver compute on demand. In the form of either data centers to house or actually subscription services to enable various users of this technology to drive their ambitions. There's an argument that many of these data centers ultimately will converge to about an 80 or 90% return type businesses. Some of the capacity will likely result in overcapacity, and I'll walk through a bit of that in a few moments. And then ultimately, it will be the software providers. If they manage their capabilities, and what I mean by that is their data sets and workflows well, they will capture the vast majority of the economic rent that will come from this new technology. We've seen this in the past before, but I will point to where we are today. There has been a convergence, in essence, of the hardware, semi, infrastructure, and software up until the point where we really saw the OpenAI released its first ChatGPT. And then you saw the divergence, and how you're seeing that divergence play out in the hardware, semi, and infrastructure providers, but the enterprise software companies still today are not capturing the benefit of the public market valuations. However, they are starting to now show the green shoots of productivity in the products that they are enabling with this Gen AI technology. And I'll give you some specific examples that we are experiencing today. If you look at, again, the one instance where this played out was the mobile internet boom. Again, the semiconductor and hardware took the first piece of this. The infrastructure and device manufacturers took the second, and ultimately that converged. But ultimately, it was a large-scale software and services who were delivering who captured the vast majority of the economic rent, and they parlayed that into being capable now to be the hyperscalers ultimately in this next wave of Gen AI. So this is just something to keep in mind about how these cycles have played out in the past. And in this world of Gen AI, there's now really 4 pillars to focus on. One of the first, of course, is the bottom, the infrastructure in and around the chips, chipsets, and hardware. There's a massive competitive dynamic. There are then what we would call the building blocks. These are not only the LLMs, but also the DevOps type companies that are enabling companies to engage in the utilization of Gen AI in their product sets. It is critical to know a few things. One of the most important in the way that Gen AI is being distributed, first of all, it is critically important to have sovereignty and dominion over the data sets and workflows in order to maintain any form of economic rent capture. If your data exists outside of your environment and your workflows exist outside of the environment, then it will likely be captured in the training modules and in the foundational models, and you will lose the capacity to utilize that uniquely. If, however, you have done an exceptional job and a good job in maintaining that sovereignty and dominion, then you'll have the ability to utilize that data and workflows and use various forms of these LLMs, in some cases small language models, to prosecute, in essence, what are the advantages of Gen AI in the environment. That's why enterprise software lends itself to a very unique place in this stack. These have typically been the customer systems of record. They typically already have the infrastructure that maintains sovereignty, dominion of these data sets. And in utilizing these large language models, what we have found is in some cases you can actually just implement small language models to deliver the sorts of efficacies that Gen AI has promised, and we're seeing that today starting to be realized across even our portfolio companies. And I'll walk through a few examples. This is just one example. We own a company called Stats Perform. It exists in the space for enterprise software for sports. It has 6.5 petabytes of sports data. That's 10 times more than our next largest competitor. This has over almost 400 artificial intelligence patents. And what we have found is if you utilize this technology or this data sets in Gen AI and compare it against open source technologies, OpenAI, Gemini, Bard, any of these others, what we found is a vast difference in performance of our technology, our software utilizing this unique data set than what you see in the open market. So this is an example of how that works. I wanted to just show you a short video, given that I have a short amount of time, that really demonstrates the difference when you set a series of prompts into our system, which has this unique data set, versus other systems which are openly available. So I think we have a video we're going to show. Correct? Or no? Yeah, we are.
Woo!
there's an example of the difference of proprietary data sets in a use case application versus some of the largest large language models in the marketplace today. For you all as asset managers, things to think about. How do you deliver and utilize Gen AI? This is 12 or 16 or so areas that are important to think about in utilizing Gen AI. I'm going to point to one example that we've developed, contract analysis, and I'll tell you why. For enterprise software companies, the economic relationship that you have with your customers is really determined by the contract that you have in place. So if you have a company with 10,000 customers, or likely 40 to 50,000 contracts, it takes literal hours and hours to analyze those contracts to understand how to utilize capacity in those contracts to capture more economic rent from your customers. We built a Gen AI-enabled system, a contract analysis system, that in essence can now analyze something that took 60 to 80 man weeks every week. Then we have one person can do this now in 1 week. And so the implications of that are vast. Once you've analyzed it, you can now say, how do I raise prices on what segment of the customers, what terms are being violated, how do I capture that, which customers do I need to reshape the contracts, and build systems on top of that. Massive productivity implications that you all, of course, in the line of work that you are doing as allocators can start to utilize these tools. We built this tool. This is something we're now not only using in our company at Vista, but now across each of our portfolio companies, and doesn't take too much of an imagination to stretch that when you're doing due diligence and looking at a company when you have structured, unstructured data and contracts, plugging in the system and analyzing now what is the value of that company based on the actual contracts that they have as opposed to what's necessarily being represented by the management team in the presentations. So this is just one of 16 or so areas that we're doing work on and developing for our portfolio companies. The other areas we focus on, for instance, are product. About 80% of our companies, again, 85 software companies today, we have some product in market that is Gen AI enabled or some product in development. We also have a series of hackathons. We bring our top developers together, and we've already done this 4 times in the last 18 months. And we bring our partners, OpenAI, Anthropic, Tribe, a bunch of different groups. They actually work with our developers to develop products in rooms just like this over weekends. And some of those products, again, 80% of these now, our companies are doing this, are now actually in the marketplace. And we're actually capturing economic rent associated with it. Another piece is on code development. 100% of our companies now have some form of code assist, code development that we are underlying. We're seeing between 10 and 40% productivity on an individual developer basis. All of these are what I call practical applications that we're actually seeing today. I'm going to hit just 2 quick points since my bell is ringing here. The implications of this for you all, not only as sovereign wealth allocators, but also as government ministers. One of our companies, just to give you an example, MindBody, we have implemented a system for managing what we call customer support. This system, in this case, deflects 37% of the calls that we get from customer support. And this company has, hundreds of thousands of customers because it's their utilization of gyms and gym memberships. As a result of the Gen AI solution, we have eliminated now 32% of our support staff. Now, if you think about a world today where we have 1 billion people who are in the support, I'll call it IT support functions, over $40 trillion of employment dollars, they are impacted by these sorts of technologies. Now, we, of course, as fiduciaries have to drive all these improvements into our companies, but you all as government ministers have to think about that from an employment perspective. What happens to those sorts of folks when they no longer need, or you no longer need them to do these sorts of support functions? Those are things that are important in the implications of Gen AI will have globally across all of our economies. The last thing I will leave you with is this. The vast majority of the economic benefits of Gen AI will be made by companies who have something they can apply it to. There will be these hyperscalers. There will be those who actually control large swaths of how Gen AI will impact us in robotics, et cetera. But the vast majority will go to those who can apply it to some asset that they currently own and capture the economic benefits of those assets. So with that, again, Your Highness and Excellencies, thank you for inviting me to share some thoughts, and happy to answer any questions another time because I'm getting kicked off the stage now. So it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robert, for this keynote. We appreciate your presence, and I'm sure we've all learned from you today. And I'm sure many sovereign investors, particularly those in the tech PE landscape, have found this keynote from a pioneer in this landscape as valuable. And now, we will witness the launch of the commemorative coin and the commemorative postal stamp for the 16th annual meeting for the International Forum for Sovereign Investors.
Ladies and gentlemen, His Excellency Abdel Salam bin Mohammed Al Murshidi, the President of Oman Investment Authority, will now invite His Highness Sayyid Yazan bin Haytham bin Tariq Al Saeed, Minister of Culture, Sports and Youth, to launch the commemorative coin and postal stamp.